Hello and welcome back to Israel with Aline. Today we are in Galilee, more specifically in the city of Capernaum, the city also known in the Bible as Yiro Shel Yeshua, the city of Jesus. Why is Capernaum the city of Jesus? We will find out when we go in. So, if you are ready, let's get started. We are entering Capernaum, known in Hebrew as Kafar Nahum, which means the village of Nahum. Jesus was born in Bethlehem, lived most of his life in Nazareth, and only at the age of 30 did he move to Capernaum, as written in Matthew 4:13. And leaving Nazareth, he went to live in Capernaum, situated by the sea in the region of Zebulun and Naphtali. But why is this city specifically called the city of Jesus? Because even though he only lived here for 3 years, he lived here the 3 most important years of his life, which are the years of his ministry and public life. And that's why the city of Capernaum receives this title. We've arrived at the most important place here in Capernaum, which is the remains of Peter's house, the house where Jesus stayed and lived. And in this house also happened one of Jesus' miracles, the healing of Peter's mother-in-law, as it is written in Luke 4:38 and 39. After leaving the synagogue that day, Jesus went to Simon's house, where he found his mother-in-law very sick with a high fever. When those present pleaded for her, Jesus stood by the bed and rebuked the fever that left her. She got up immediately and began to serve them. In this drawing, we can see what Peter's house looked like, very different from the archaeological remains that we see here. What's happening? In the first centuries, Christianity will be a forbidden religion and persecuted by the Roman Empire. So churches cannot be built. So what do the first Christians here do? They build a domus ecclesia, which means a secret church. This place is going to have a secret church. Then, when Christianity finally becomes a permitted religion in the Holy Land, a church is built here in the Byzantine period, which is this octagonal church that we are seeing. It has 8 sides. This church will also later be destroyed and rebuilt, and the last reconstruction is here on top. This church will be built on pillars, meaning it will be on top of the archaeological remains, but without covering them. And a super cool thing they did is that the church floor is made of glass. So from here we will go up and also look at the archaeological remains from above. So let's go. Look how cool. There is now a group of ladies who are Israeli Arab Christians visiting the church, and there is also a nun talking to them. So let's move to the side so as not to disturb what they are doing, but let's get here to this point with the glass and see the excavations from above. The archaeological excavations of Capernaum began in 1838, that is 180 years ago. And that's why I'm going to show you pictures now from before this church was built. We can clearly see the octagonal Byzantine church, but we can also see some walls that seem a bit random. These are the oldest walls, both from the Domus Ecclesia, the secret church, as well as from Peter's house. And this church that we are walking in now, it was only built in 1990, meaning it is super modern for Israel's standards. Today, Capernaum is an archaeological park, but 2,000 years ago it was a city, a very important city in Galilee. Among the people who lived here was Peter, but not only him, there was a whole city here, and we can see a little bit of it up to Jumim. These black stones are remnants of houses from Capernaum, precisely from the time of Jesus, from the Roman period. An interesting thing is that we see that all the building stones are black. Why? Because we are very close to the Golan Heights. And the Golan Heights, they are actually inactive volcanoes. And this whole region was covered in lava a long time ago. So here the stones are basaltic stones, which means it's lava, it's hardened magma, and that's why all the houses were built with this stone. But suddenly, as we walk here in Capernaum, we see a building that is different from any other building. Notice that there in the back there is a white building. What could it have been? This colossal building, it is a synagogue, or rather, two synagogues, one built on top of the other. This base that we are seeing, which is made of black stones, like the rest of the city, is the base of the synagogue from the time of Jesus. We know that Jesus frequented synagogues and that he also frequented the synagogue. For some reason, the population of Capernaum decided to dismantle this synagogue, perhaps because they wanted to expand it, perhaps because it was in a very bad state of conservation, but they dismantled it and built a colossal synagogue on top, which are these white stones that we are seeing. The question is, when was this renovation done? Let's now go in together and see it. So when is this part of the synagogue from, and how can archaeologists find that out? They pick up and raise the columns. So here they raised the columns and the floor of the synagogue and saw what was underneath. And they found coins, archaeological remains, and were able to date this synagogue from the 5th century, that is, a Byzantine synagogue built over the synagogue from the time of Jesus. In the times of Jesus, the Temple of Jerusalem still existed, and it was the heart of all the people of Israel. It's where the priests were, it's where sacrifices were made, it's where they went on the 3 major annual pilgrimages. So why was there a need for a synagogue? It was a community center, the center of the local community, where scriptures were taught and studied, where meetings were held. And that's why we know that Jesus also frequented synagogues, including this one, to teach the word. And here occurs the passage from Luke 4:33 to 35. And in the synagogue there was a man who had a spirit of an unclean demon, and he cried out with a loud voice, saying, "Ah, what have we to do with you, Jesus of Nazareth? Have you come to destroy us? I know who you are, the Holy One of God." 35. And Jesus rebuked him, saying, "Be quiet and come out of him." And the demon, throwing him to the ground in the midst of the people, came out of him, without doing him any harm. We are walking in the remains of a Byzantine synagogue, but if we look here through the door, we see on the other side the church, and beneath it are the remains of a Byzantine church. This means that Capernaum was an example of coexistence, a city where Jews and Christians lived side by side. And this colossal synagogue will end up being destroyed along with the entire city of Capernaum when a major earthquake occurs here. Since the synagogue was made of stone, stones don't disappear, they fall and crumble. When they prepare this archaeological park, they go and remove all these stones and scatter them around here. What we are seeing here now behind me are remnants of the facade of the synagogue. And look how interesting. We see here some symbols, among them the symbol of the menorah, the candelabrum of the Temple of Jerusalem. We remember that the synagogue and the temple are two different things, but even when this synagogue was built, the Temple of Jerusalem had already been destroyed, but the memory of the temple remained and remains alive. So we see that in the synagogue they put symbols of the Temple of Jerusalem, the menorah, and on both sides there are 2 other small symbols. One that looks like a Nike symbol, but it's not. It's a shofar, which is a trumpet made from a horn that was played. And on the other side, the symbol that is a shovel, which was the shovel used to remove the ashes from the Temple of Jerusalem. But there's a symbol that we'll see if you can figure out what it is. It is a construction on wheels. This construction symbolizes the Temple of Jerusalem, and more specifically, the Ark of the Covenant. The Ark of the Covenant didn't have wheels. We remember that it was carried. So what story does this represent? This story represents what happens after the Ark of the Covenant is stolen by the Philistines. The Philistines are going to steal the Ark of the Covenant and take it to a coastal city called Ashdod. But the city will be plagued by a great plague. So the Philistines understand that they should not have the Ark of the Covenant, and they put the Ark of the Covenant on wheels and put animals to pull it, and send the Ark of the Covenant to a nearby Jewish city called Beit Shemesh. The people of the city of Beit Shemesh, folks, despite being Jews, they do not treat the Ark of the Covenant with all respect, and therefore they will also receive a plague. And after they are plagued by this plague, they also decide to send the Ark of the Covenant forward, and the Ark is then sent to a city near Jerusalem called Kiryat Jearim, and from there later the Ark goes up to Jerusalem to its due place. So I find it very interesting that of all the biblical stories they decide to represent here, they represent symbols of the Temple of Jerusalem and also this very different story of the Ark of the Covenant. But now it's time to continue our tour. Let's go! The city of Capernaum will see many other biblical passages. For example, the healing of the paralytic. We saw a bit of the city's houses. The houses themselves were made of stone, but the roof was made of wood and clay. So when they come, they break a piece of this wooden and clay roof and lower the paralytic through the roof. This is also the hometown of the Apostle Matthew. And this fishing town, founded 2,200 years ago, is going to be the center of Jesus' ministry. And that's why all this area here in the north of the Sea of Galilee is going to be the area that will see the most miracles. We have here nearby the place of the multiplication of the loaves and fishes. We have Peter's primacy. We have a lot of the Beatitudes, where he gives the Sermon on the Mount, the city of Migdal, also known as Magdala, and also crossing the sea to the other side, we arrive at the city of Gadara, where Jesus meets the demon-possessed man. So, this small geographical space next to the Sea of Galilee brings together so many important biblical passages. So let's now get to the edge of the sea. And here we can see why Peter lived in this city. Peter was a fisherman. And right next to Capernaum is the Sea of Galilee, which is a large freshwater lake. But think for those people who lived here 2,000–3,000 years ago. This amount of water is as if it were an entire sea for them. The Sea of Galilee continues to be essential for Israel. Even today, it is one of the country's largest sources of drinking water. And here we can see the transparency and cleanliness of the water. So when you come to Israel and come to visit Capernaum, take a few minutes, sit here by the sea, listen to its noise, and see what was seen in the times of Jesus. The landscape here is practically untouched. And also because of this, Capernaum is like taking a trip back in time. I hope you enjoyed our tour here in Capernaum today. Don't forget to leave that like and subscribe to the channel for more videos. A big kiss, a special thank you to my dad who is holding the camera today, and see you next time.